now listening to Protecting Your Nest with board-certified family medicine and obesity medicine specialist Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com. Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. Achieving our health-related goals is not just about what we eat, but involves many considerations. One that is obvious, but not an area of focus for many of us, is our emotions. That's why the E in my ROKE acronym focuses not only on life experiences, but also on protecting those very precious emotions. Many of us are emotional eaters, partly because we have not had life experiences that provide the tools to help us when we're facing emotional challenges. The question is, how do we go from our current state to a place where we acquire the emotional intelligence to navigate in the world? So what is emotional intelligence in the first place? It's the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. My hope is that today's guest will put this all into perspective while also sharing her weight loss journey. Today's guest is Nicole. Nicole has many certifications, including certifications in senior nutrition, which is close to my heart since I take care of a lot of seniors, emotional eating, and as a nutrition and exercise coach. She's the founder and CEO of Dark Horse Nutrition and the author of Emotional Eating Journal, Breaking Free from the Emotional Eating Prison, which is now, of course, available on Amazon. She also is on the board of directors of the Dulles Regional Chamber of Commerce. She's a public speaker. And of course, she is a YouTuber on her fastly growing YouTube channel, Former Fat Girl. It takes a lot of courage to say that out loud. So Nicole, I have enjoyed seeing your content on YouTube. I appreciate you and I connecting, and let's have a conversation on the Protecting Your Nest podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to chat with you, and thanks for having me on for a conversation, especially about emotional eating, something that I struggled with personally. So that's near and dear to my heart too.
Yeah, well, food is all about emotion. And I know whenever I'm visiting my mom, in spite of her knowing what certain foods will do to my belly, she just puts that sad face on, on me and, really wants me to eat those foods like her dressing, and my belly just can't tolerate it though. So one of these days she won't look at me that way anymore. But I do understand. So let's take a look at who you are. And one of the things I noticed that you were an athletic person over the years. So let's talk a little bit about your life as an athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a tomboy. I don't know if that's still a term, but I'm in my 40s, so I grew up in the 80s.
Yeah.
The commercial at 11 o'clock at night. Do you know where your kids are? So I was out playing to all hours of the night until my parents called us in. So I would be playing, tag football with the boys, climbing trees. I played softball, basketball. I ran track. I was a sprinter. So I played all of the things. I was super athletic, wiffle ball, tennis, but sports, it was track, basketball, and softball were my main sports. So I was pretty much an athlete my entire life. I don't know how much into my story you want me to get, but it kind of leads into how I became, I guess, fat, like former fat girl. So I kind of had a crap diet my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
The sweets, the Swedish fish, the 5-cent candies, the chocolate, the ice cream, all those things. But when I was 11, my brother passed away, and you don't know how to cope. I was a kid. I had no idea what to do with those emotions. I've never experienced trauma to that level. And my parents just lost a kid. So they were dealing with their own trauma and grief. So I was kind of left alone. So I turned to food. And that's kind of how the slippery slope of my weight gain and my unhealthy habits started. But again, I was athletic. I was a tomboy. I was out. We didn't have internet. We didn't have cell phones. So I was able to outwork a bad diet, if you will. But during my entire 14-year military career, which I know we're going to talk about later, so I won't get too much into that, but my weight gain started truly towards the end of my career. And then it really skyrocketed when I got out because I didn't have anyone telling me to get up,
Mm-hmm.
work out, to get to work or do any of those things. So I kind of got lazy, I guess. And at my heaviest, at 5 feet short, I stopped weighing myself, but I was about 200 pounds at my heaviest. Sleep apnea, chronic inflammation, arthritis, all the itises in my one knee. I've had multiple knee surgeries. Of course, I was clinically obese. I had digestive issues, high blood pressure, and all this was because of my weight. So yeah, so I was lucky to where my athleticism was able to help me when I was younger, but as I got older and less active, all that kind of caught up to me, and it caught up to me fast. And before I knew it, I was super unhealthy.
Yeah, it's striking that a person who's young can be so sick. I mean, it's really bizarre that this human body, which is pretty amazing, just sometimes can't tolerate it. And I think it depends on many factors. It's also when I think about you losing your brother, I mean, we have a trauma recovery center in our health system, which is Advocate Health. And so when people struggle, there is a place they can go and kind of get the support they need. And I wish that existed back then. I wish it existed in all health systems, but we need a lot of support with that. That's why my nest does include trauma, because I find that when people are trying to make decisions about health, they're going to struggle if they haven't recovered from trauma. And I'm not sure you fully ever recover, but at least you want to be able to function in society. But you did mention the military, and I know you had done that for several years. So what was, I always wanted to be a military pilot slash doctor, and I couldn't see well enough to qualify.
Oh,
So, but that would have been my legacy if I had a qualified. So, and maybe one day, like Dr. Kiltz, I'll still learn to fly. I've taken flying lessons. I just
yeah.
haven't, kind of finalized that yet. So, but talk about this whole military experience. What was that like?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned what you wanted to do. So people, because I was in the Air Force, and people always assume I was a pilot. So you can't see well enough. I'm not tall enough to do anything, so I could be a pilot. I'm 3 inches taller than a legal short person.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so I enlisted just shy of my 21st birthday, June of 2001. I was in the delayed entry program, so I enlisted on active duty Air Force. I was bored. I hated school. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. One of those, and I saw a commercial of an army commercial, low crawling. I was like, I want to do that. So I just got in my car that day after I saw that commercial and just went to the recruiting station. Every recruiter was out to lunch except for the Air Force. That's honestly how I ended up in the Air Force, because they were the only recruiter in the office. I didn't care what branch at the time. I just wanted to get in. Like, college wasn't for me. So I enlisted June 2021. I was on the delayed entry program. My basic training date was August 22nd, 2001. I was delayed again. I forget why. So I was put in the September 11th, 2001 class. I was delayed again. Things
Of course.
happened. And I was on the plane September 14th. No, late evening, September 13th. My pay date is September 14th. So I was on a plane days after that happened.
Wow.
I would be lying if I didn't say I was scared like crapless. I would never tell my mom that, but yeah, I was scared. They had air marshals on the plane. Like, it was no joke.
Wow.
But that's when I enlisted. That's the time I started my military career, was when that happened. So I enlisted as a cop. So I was a military police officer. I did that for about 5 years. I left active duty. I got out after 4.5 years. I had to stay in an extra 6 months if I wanted to leave Korea and get back to the
Hmm.
States. And I got out for 8 months. When you get out and you serve less than 8 years, you're put into the inactive ready reserves, so
Hmm.
IRR. So they can call you back or recall you at any time. So you're technically still under contract for 8 years, whether you serve for 6 or 4. You have an 8-year contract. So I was in the IRR for about 8 months, and again, they don't prepare you when you leave active duty very well. They don't transition you. So I had no idea what to do. At the time, I wanted to be a cop. That's why I was a cop in the Air Force. But it was so competitive back then. There were, for instance, I'm from New Jersey. So there will be like 150 applicants for 2 full-time police officer jobs. Of course, there's a lot of stuff that's happened in recent years to where now there's a shortage and no issues. But back then, there was full-time slots because they were all they were just hard to come by. So I was in the IRR for 8 months. I didn't have a career. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just went back in. So I went back into the Air National Guard in Massachusetts. I was full-time. So I was a GS in their GS system, their federal government system, full-time. And then 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, I would be uniform service. So I did that for about 10 years. So I served a total of 14 years in the Air Force. I just got out in 2016. I ended my career as a intel analyst, so imagery analyst.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. And just thinking about that many years serving, first of all, thank you for your service. But it also seems like the type of environment where being athletic and being in good shape would just kind of come with the job. So it's interesting that you still had struggles in spite of that. But before I touch on that, I know you kind of went into the intelligence field as well. And was that while in the military or when you got out of the military?
Yeah, no. So both. So
okay.
I'm originally from New Jersey. I'm a Jersey girl. Philadelphia sports fan all the way. So I got into intelligence when I left active duty. So when I went into the Air National Guard, I went into what would be classified as HR, the equivalent in the civilian field, because I went in, I just said, what career field doesn't deploy, and I can get a full-time slot. So I would have a career path in the federal government system and buy back my active duty time and retire that way. So I did that for a few years, and the base I was at lost our fighter jets. So Otis Air National Guard Base, they changed their name. I don't know what they're called now, but back then it was Otis Air National Guard Base. They were actually the first responders for 9/11. So the first fighter jets on scene were from Otis, Massachusetts,
Wow.
Otis Air National Guard Base. So we lost our fighter jets. So we lost our fighter wing designation. So in order to keep the base open, they switched to intelligence. So I was like, that sounds cool. I'll do that. So I just retrained. So I retrained in 2009, and I moved here to Northern Virginia in 2011 for a contract job doing intelligence full time. So I was flying back and forth. So I was still doing intelligence in the military, but that got me my government career here in Northern Virginia, which I ended up quitting last year to do my business full time. But that's essentially how I landed in Virginia and met my husband, and now I'm stuck in this state of Virginia.
Yeah, well, I hope it's not too bad for you. So, yeah, I think there's so many places to live, and you have life experiences that led you there. So, we just visited Mississippi. I
Oh,
went to school in New Orleans. I mean, we've traveled a pretty good amount, but you know, where you land is just sometimes it's random, just like this whole Air Force thing for you. But just hopefully, it's a good spot for you. Now, let's dive into the this idea that you are a former fat girl. Of course, when you see that tagline, you're like, that is pretty, that's pretty, it's kind of obvious what you're selling here. You're trying to let people know you've come around. So talk a little bit about you know, obviously you're not the same person you were. So you're a new version of you. So talk about that journey. You know, what was it like back then and what led to you changing to who you are today?
man, I just did a live stream last night with JT, I think Poco
hmm
Moonshine, whatever. So that actually got me pretty good at describing this, because that was the first time that he asked me this question that
hmm
you asked me. That was the first time I got asked this question. And it's hard because it was a life journey, right? So I'm 43 next month, and my journey started at age 11. So it was a long
mm
journey here. But essentially, I described a little bit how I coped with how many people cope with loss and trauma is food or alcohol,
hmm
substance to pleasure, right? Because it makes you feel good and it kind of numbs the pain and you don't have to deal with it. Um, so I did that for a long time. I essentially never grieved. And because of my never facing it and facing that trauma and really dealing with it, because of that, over time, and I didn't realize this until I went through therapy, that I am funny in real life. I'm sarcastic. I'm goofy. Whatever. Like in real life, I'm just very goofy. But I use that as a defense also, to kind of keep people at bay. So I was afraid of close relationships because I lost my brother. So I had that fear, which I didn't know was there, but subconsciously I had that fear that if someone gets close to me, I'm going to lose them, whatever that means. So I lacked self-confidence. I was just a mess mentally, emotionally, and then of course physically, being almost 200 pounds
Mhm.
over 200 pounds, and that's almost 100 pounds overweight. I think it was a total of like 85 pounds total overweight at my heaviest. So fast forward to about right before the pandemic, so probably in about 2019, 2018, I
Mhm.
finally went to therapy.
Mhm.
All these years later, right? So I lost my brother in 91. So all these years
Wow.
later, I went to therapy, and that's where I did cognitive behavioral therapy. So kind of rewire my brain,
Mhm.
rewiring my thinking, um, putting my thoughts on trial, if you will. And that's where I learned that I lacked self confidence. I had such a negative outlook on life.
Mhm.
Um, I shouldered the blame for everything. If you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and we usually say good morning every morning, and then one day you don't say good morning to me, I take that as, oh, he doesn't like me anymore. I did something
Mhm.
wrong. So all these
Mhm.
things were happening, and he brought all that to light. So I then had tools to work on that. So once I finished therapy for about 4 months, um, I had more self confidence. I had a more positive outlook on life. And that's where I was able to start to make change in my physical health, because my emotional health was taken care of. So I'm of the belief where no matter what you do in the kitchen, no matter what you do in the gym, if you don't take care of the root cause, and that's why I
Mhm.
focus so much on emotional eating, because if you don't take care of the root cause, you are never going to make lasting change. I've done all the fad diets. I even went vegan for 4 years. Like I did all the things to get this weight off, but it wasn't until I went to therapy and really got to the root cause that I was able to make stuff happen. So when the pandemic happened, I was furloughed from my federal government job. So while everyone else was gaining weight,
Hmm.
that's when I started losing, because I was lucky though. Like I was going to a CrossFit gym. The owner had a garage gym, and
Mhm.
he would let two of us work out at a time. So I would just work out for 2 hours a day. So I
Mm.
started dropping weight by restriction and working out 2 hours a day. So I'm not saying it was
Mhm.
a healthy way, but I ended up dropping 50 pounds doing that. I did get certified, and I furthered my education during this time to help me lose weight. And as I lost weight, I realized there's no one or very few people in the space helping people with weight loss who have been obese themselves. So
Mm.
that's initially why I started my business. And then fast forward to the beginning of this year, beginning of 2023, I found low carb. I've always known low carb, but in my formal training, we're taught, ketogenic diet is bad long term.
Mhm.
You need carbs. Like we're told they're non-essential in the nutrition sense, but we need
That's right.
carbs, we need fiber. Saturated fat is important, but limit those things. Lean and green, like we're taught. So I
Mhm.
was afraid. So I never went low carb, but I did my own research. I binge watched Bart K's video. I went down
Mhm.
the rabbit hole, and I was like, let me just try this for 30 days. And this was about March of this year.
Mhm.
And then I was like, wow, after about 45 days, Tony, I've never had so much self-confidence in my
Mhm.
entire life. I gave a public speak in about 45 days after transitioning to low carb, and this is the best way I can explain the differences. It was about 50 business owners in this room. I was in person. Again, I used to lack self-confidence, self-worth, so I would sweat. I would just try not to pass out. I had 0 response. I didn't even have a bead of sweat. My heart wasn't even racing. I had
Mm.
0 response. I've never had that feeling before. I've never experienced that before. I have no anxiety, no depression. I have all the self-confidence in the world. So the weight loss, the sleep apnea, all that stuff, but my mental health and my
Mhm.
cognitive functioning is so far beyond where it was even post therapy. Like, it's even improved since going low carb, and I've never experienced this type of transformation in my entire life. I feel better in my 40s than I ever did in my 20s and 30s. And
Wow.
I put that to diet, of course, and then just working on my emotional and mental health. And I think you need all of that to be in a good spot.
Well, I definitely believe in the root cause way of thinking. I think that our entire health system is flawed, and all they have to do is just go around the corner and talk to a functional medicine doctor, allopathic doctor of any kind, really. And that's what they try. Even a chiropractor, they think about, well, why are you having back pain? And let's try to get to the root cause. We can do some traditional things, but if you don't get to the root cause, you'll be chasing your tail. So it's really nice that you had that kind of understanding. It's nice that you also acquired some tools, because if you have tools, that'll help you when you have a problem to solve. You have you have an approach. You have a way to it's like a recipe, right? But man, that recipe is so much easier to follow if you also have mental clarity and you're not tired and you're not on an emotional roller coaster because your sugars are up and down. And I do speak publicly, and when I go and speak at Low Carb USA or Keto Orlando or whatever, I do feel that the mental clarity is always something I don't have to worry about. And because my emotions are in a good place, I I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about the up and down sugars, feeling tired, all of the things that you don't want to have in front of you. And for me, it was a irritable stomach, so I don't have to worry about. I hope this is over so I can go to the bathroom. So I'm just happy to have that out the way too. Now, that former fat girl,
Yeah.
whose body you were living in, how much do you miss that person? Is there parts of that life that you, even though you just gave a great example of why things are better, are there parts of that life that you still miss?
I mean, honestly, I mean, I wish I could say yes, but no,
Not
because
really.
it's, yeah, I didn't realize how much of a bad spot I was in. I was just going through the motions, I guess, faking it till you make it, most of my life, which is it's sad when when I think back on it, that I was literally just faking it until I make it. I was just going through the motions. I
Yeah,
was faking being happy because I realize now I wasn't truly happy. I wasn't
yeah.
truly, mentally and emotionally clear. So the reason I did former fat girl is, yes, it's blunt. Some people get offended. I would never understand that because it is what it is. But I'm of the belief that we have to be honest with ourselves or nothing's
Hmm.
going to change. That's a definition of insanity. And I feel like you said, the Band-Aid, but I feel like it's so much more than that. I feel like we're so afraid to hurt people's feelings,
Hmm.
and we're so afraid to tell people the truth because they're going to get offended. Everyone's offended about everything anyway, but people are going to get offended. So I did former fat girl to make a statement that you call a spade a spade. You're fat. There are bad foods. Wheat and whole grains are not good. All things in moderation doesn't make sense. If you have, most people don't have an off switch. Most people can't
Hmm.
moderate. That's why we have an obesity epidemic. So
Hmm.
that's part of the reason I went former fat girl, because I'm really, because that landed me almost 100 pounds overweight with that mentality, and I'm tired of tiptoeing and afraid to hurt people's feelings. I'm like, I was fat. Like, if you are obese and you are 50, 60, 70 more pounds overweight, like, you're fat. You're not in a fat body, you are fat. So that's why I went with that name, is because I was fat. Now I'm not, but I'm to the point where it's very frustrating because, like, things are just getting worse, and we're so busy, we're worried about people's feelings where we should be worrying about people's health. Our healthcare
Mm.
system is going to collapse probably in my lifetime if things don't change. So call a spade a spade. There are bad foods. There is no such thing as moderation at this point, and I was fat. Like, if that
Right.
offends you, I'm sorry, but I was fat.
Yeah, well, in the woke culture we live in, you can get offended about anything, and I agree. Like there may be some terminology, like I use severe obesity instead of morbid obesity. I think
Is
there are
that better?
times. Well, maybe I don't know. I don't. That's the thing. I don't know. It's like, and who do you ask? I mean, I would ask a person who maybe suffers from it, but I don't know that there's ever a perfect anything. I think that I'm always hearing about like I remember hearing a conversation on the radio about how do we describe, they don't want to use the term illegal immigrants. They don't, they want, so they change the terms, but sometimes as they keep changing the terms, uh, it, it, it puts you down this going back to that rabbit hole idea, and you're never really at a place where you can kind of settle for a term. So what I like about you though, as I think about your channel, and I encourage everybody checking us out to check out your channel, Former Fat Girl, is that it's fairly straightforward. It's kind of like you just kind of say it as it is, and sometimes we need to not be so indirect with our comments. We were doing couch conversations with the doctors, and this doctor who also has a PhD, which, if you're a doctor with an MD and a PhD, you have to at least be smart to qualify,
Yeah.
right? So he's smart, but during the stream, and I stream couch conversations with the doctors on my YouTube channel, so I'm always feeling like I have to mitigate arguments that are anti what we believe, right? And we have Dr. Terry Mason, who's a vegan, which is kind of cool that we're on the same platform. But this guy just said there's no such thing as reversing type 2 diabetes. And in my brain, so the rest of my teammates on the panel were, hospitable, and I don't know what they really believed. I know Dr. Terry Mason is a plant-based guy, and he believes that it is possible. He didn't really say it. They were very hospitable, but I just had to call that out. And I just think that if you don't call things out, then where did that leave us? We should all. I sat on a plane coming from Mississippi, and the guy sat next to me was very much different in terms of his political ideology, but we
Oh,
had a phenomenal conversation. We should be able to have conversations, agree to disagree, talk about why we feel the way we do, and then, go to the bar and have a beer. You know what I mean? We should be able to do that.
exactly.
And they don't do it in politics no more. So, but what I like about your channel is that you're very straightforward, direct. And I think we need people in this space of nutrition, low carb, keto, carnivore, et cetera, to be comfortable with who they are. I'm curious about your family because we're still, different, not too many carnivores out there, So where's your family landing with your decisions? Are they supportive? Are they concerned? How has that gone so far?
Yeah, so in my immediate household, it's just me and my husband. We don't plan. I mean, I'm at the age where kids aren't even in the future, but
Yeah.
yeah, we never wanted kids, so it's just me and him. He's supportive.
Okay.
Um, he has decreased his carbs, but I've never
Hmm.
asked. I don't even tell my clients to go zero. I don't urge
Hmm.
them to go zero. I'm very much what you're comfortable with. Let's just decrease things. So,
Yep.
and that's kind of what I did with my husband. Just let him know what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and he listens.
Hmm.
He's heard my conversations, so he's learned just overhearing me. So he just decided on his own to decrease his carbs. So
Hmm.
we'll go out to eat, for instance, and I'll get the burger patty, without the bun. And he started eating half the bun. He
Hmm.
started eating, half the fries instead of the whole thing, and a couple potatoes instead of the
Hmm.
whole thing. So he's made little cuts like that. And he said he's noticed a difference. And if he eats the whole bun, he says he notices an immediate like exhaustion. So he
Mm.
notices a difference now. So he's made
That's
little
good.
changes like that. Um, my dad, my parents are still in New Jersey. My dad's type 2 diabetic. I wish he would do this.
Hmm.
My mom's a nurse. He doesn't listen to either of us, but he's not changing. My mom is actually going through my low carb program now. She likes
Mm.
Atkins, so she wants to, I mean, low carb, but Atkins, but
Hmm.
she's trying to get back to that, and she's doing well so far. So it's just me and my mom, and my husband is kind of made little cuts, and my dad, the one of us who should be doing it, is he has no interest.
Yeah,
He thinks
but I like the way you're doing it. Like I'm basically in the same situation. We've had the conversations. Everybody knows what I do, but I think that definitely don't want to be preachy. You don't want to, So you just, but when people are ready, I would love to help. I like doing the work we're doing here by sharing this message broadly. I like being in front of patients and I'm hoping to continue to lead my health system. But I I just think that it is what it is. So you give people information, you encourage them, and then you make the best of whatever they decide they want to do. And I will never be at dinner or at a restaurant and judge my family for the decisions they make. And includes just like you, my wife, even though she's the one with type 1 diabetes, we make sure that we don't judge, and she'll make decisions. And if she makes a decision, you know what? I decided I'm going to eat some pound cake, right? And she kind of knows she may struggle to match the insulin with that pound cake, and she knows she's going to struggle, but she may make that decision in that moment. That's not my job to determine. My job is to say, hey, let me help you match it as your husband, and then you'll do your thing. But my hope is that on most days that we're not having that conversation. We're eating not a 40 or 50 carb pound cake, but maybe a 7 carb, green beans.
yeah,
I think that'll be easier. So now you don't have to worry about that variability, that glycemic variability that you always tend to see in a situation
exactly.
like that. So I'm right there with you in terms of how we manage our families. I hope people who are watching, who are doing this or about to do it, you get excited because your life changes. It blows your mind. And be careful. We're not preachers unless that's what you do for a living. just, and what people will do, they'll ask you questions anyway, and you can, girl, what you doing? They'll be saying things like that. And then when they ask questions, that's when you want to chime in and just allow them to, get what they want to get out of it, and just say, hey, if you ever want to learn more, just let me know. I'll share, or I'll refer you to some people on social media like what we're doing, or YouTube, to help teach. So that's perfect. Now I did see something as I was thinking about talking to you, and it's really about your coaching method, right? And when I saw your coaching method, I was like, this sounds like my nest a little bit. So I said, we got the same kind of mindset. So the first thing is the mindset. And in my nest, that's the T, which talks about our thoughts. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want to kind of dive into those 4 things that you think are important. Let's start with the mindset, and why is that so important?
Yeah, so it's similar to your method. It's mindset, emotion, nutrition, and movement. And of course you can go further and just add to it. But yeah, mindset, I mean, you have to be ready, willing, and able
Mm-hmm.
to make a lifestyle change, because it is a lifestyle change. And uh to not sugarcoat it, it's going to suck, right? Especially if you're coming from it. Because I learned this. I don't Everyone knows Bart K, but his better half, Pim, I've become good friends with her, and I love her approach and her thought process. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning, to get your mindset right, a lot of people hesitate because they know it's going to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
And you, especially if you're coming from it from addiction or emotional eating or something like that, it's going to be very, very hard to wrap your mindset around that, because going in it's going to be hard. And I always like to say, there's never going to be a good time to lose
Mm-hmm.
weight. There's never going to be a good time to take control over your health. There's never going to be a good time. So start now and just go into it knowing that it's going to suck. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be uncomfortable, but you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, going against your cravings and your urges and everything your illogical and your irrational brain is telling you to do. It's going to be uncomfortable. And I think that's why, for me, mindset is most important, because that is the determining factor whether you are going to make a change or not,
Mm-hmm.
is being ready, willing, and able. And it's going in knowing that it's going to be hard and it's going to be suck. Just being honest with yourself and just
Mm-hmm.
being prepared for that and ready to push through those hard and sucky moments.
Yeah, and this it's tough because, we're always faced with moments of doubt and self-limiting thinking. And and I don't know that people fully understand how true that is. Like I've been enjoying Deion Sanders. So we're recording this when Deion Sanders is doing incredible stuff with Colorado. And he's really inspiring a lot of people. And we don't know how this story is going to end. But the question is, does Deion Sanders have moments of doubt? Does he have self-limiting beliefs? Now, you wouldn't know it if you look at him.
I
Seems
think
like
everyone does, though.
everybody does, right? And that's why I used him as an example, because I'm sure I'm sure that I don't know what his process was to become the coach after leaving Jackson State, I think it was. But I guarantee you he may have gotten some no's before he got a yes, right? And in those moments when you hear a no, how does that impact you? And that's why for so many people, whether it's listening to affirmations or something inspirational, your favorite, Anthony Robbins, Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher, he calls himself, and others, we all need something to lean on. And for maybe me and you, it may be your husband. For you, it may be my wife. We're kind of here for each other. Sometimes it's your kids. I know you don't have kids. That may be a perk of a kid. So I may be able to talk you into this.
So you're talking extrinsic motivation.
That's right. That's true. And I like to get a little bit of both if possible. But again, you can get it from anywhere. And it doesn't have to be mom. It doesn't have to be siblings. It could be a friend. It could be somebody that you work with. But again, don't think that Deion Sanders doesn't have moments. So that's the mindset. We talked a little bit about the second one already, which is our emotions. And oh my God, I mean, our emotions are so critical. And I did a video, and I used the term emotional intelligence when I talked about, Will Smith and how he responded at the, award ceremony.
Just what the
And that moment, thanks for replaying that for me. I felt it. So, and man, so a guy at that level having that moment when his emotional intelligence wasn't at the highest level, but again, we have to have our emotions in check if we're going to make good decisions. So talk a little bit about what your thoughts are on that topic.
Yeah, emotions. That is probably the hardest because that goes to, so I equate emotions. So there's a difference between emotions and thoughts. So when I went through cognitive behavioral therapy, I was told to put my thoughts on paper, not my emotions, right? So there's a difference there because there's a confusion between how we're feeling and emotions. So there's a difference between feelings and emotions. Feelings give emotions meaning. So that's part of the emotional intelligence. But when it comes to emotions, it's twofold. It's one, understanding that your body doesn't distinguish between emotions, how your body responds, right? So you could be depressed, angry, fearful, sad, or even happy, and you have the same response physiologically. And then the next is understanding emotional hunger, because I deal specifically with emotional eating and nutrition. So when I'm talking emotions, I'm talking understanding the difference between feelings and emotions, and distinguishing between emotional hunger and physical hunger, and some emotional intelligence as far as distinguishing between those and the physiological response and all that. But it's really understanding your emotions, your triggers, your patterns, what foods you lean on, how you respond, and then kind of going through my 3-step process, which is I use the acronym SAT. So stop, assess, and take action. So stop is obviously not giving into your cravings, to give yourself those couple seconds to switch from irrational brain to rational brain. So you can assess your hunger, physical, emotional. Are you physically hungry? Is it true hunger? Does it happen gradually over time? Do you crave a variety of foods? Or does it happen suddenly, abruptly? You crave sugary, salty foods and you feel guilt or shame after? And then take action. Do something that doesn't involve food. And then kind of go from there. So that's
Yeah.
kind of my process on working with clients on a high level.
I like the acronym, and I love acronyms in general. Going back to tools, it's a tool to in that moment help you pause, and I think the first part is so important because if we just paused and kind of doing Obama, because Obama, he takes forever to answer questions, you know. So he always pauses, but maybe that's why he does it, because he just takes his time and he comes out with a thoughtful answer.
Yes.
But I think we need to pause. And then if we pause just long enough, it'll help us to move in probably the right direction. Just pausing. So I like that. And I think that's very valuable. Now, exercises, you mentioned earlier about, how it's hard to do things sometimes and never really want to do it, but exercise is probably high on that list, right? And I only exercise a couple of times a week with bands, high intensity, and that's intentional. I don't do it for a long time. I take walks with my wife, and I stretch, but that exercise is obviously important. So when you're coaching people, where does exercise fit on the spectrum?
I just tell them to walk.
Yeah, I like that.
Honestly, because most of my clients are over 50 pounds overweight.
Okay.
So we really need to focus on food. So I believe in focusing on one thing at a time. If
Mhm.
I'm not a personal trainer, but even if I'm given like simple body weight exercises while working on nutrition, it's overwhelming
Mhm.
and it's impossible for humans. We're not robots, so it's impossible for us to focus 100% of our attention on multiple things.
Mhm.
So I rather than focus on nutrition. So I literally just tell my clients to walk. I think
Yeah,
that's the most underrated form of exercise. It's good for mental clarity. It's good for managing your emotions. If you have diabetes, hey, it can help with it can help with your blood sugar. It can help with all these things. It's very powerful and it's the easiest thing to do. Just put your shoes on and walk out the door.
that's right. And it's real exercise. And again, anybody who's not walking, you're gonna feel it. Don't think it's not exercise. It's the real thing. Trust me. And so be careful when it's hot outside. And if you're dealing with diabetes, make sure you're thoughtful about, okay, if you're on insulin, do I need more insulin, less insulin? Be very thoughtful about that. That's why walking after eating is such a good time to do it.
Yeah, because
After
of the blood
dinner.
sugar and yeah.
Yeah, get it back down without having to depend on medicine. So the last one is the obvious one, which is nutrition. Obviously, nutrition plays a big role. Any thoughts on nutrition?
The old Nicole, lean and green, plant based, the whole thing, saturated fat, bad, chicken breast. But the new
Right.
Nicole, the new reformed nutrition coach, yeah, it's just I believe in adding foods in
Hmm.
to start. I think that's easiest because taking things away, restriction, people
Hmm.
rebel, people don't like that. So how I work with clients is everyone who's going to watch this and we're talking knows that I promote low carb or we
Hmm.
wouldn't be talking likely. So this is just what I promote. This is what I eat. Um, but the problem is when clients are coming to me, they're obese for a reason. They're super high carb. They eat very little animal foods, very little meat. So what
Right.
I do is I just start slowly. I don't restrict their carbs. I never ask my clients. So I'm less than 20 grams a day. So I'm not zero,
Right.
but I never ask my clients to go as low as me. I never even ask my client to get to 50. I say, let's just make small cuts. Let's focus
Mm.
on proteins and fats first. Let's focus on your meat first. And then let's work on your carb choices and focus on carbs after the
Mm.
fact. So I've had clients reverse diabetes doing that. I've had clients continue to decrease their carbs even after we came up with a carb range. But I usually start my clients on maybe 100, 150 grams a day and kind of go
Hmm.
from there because obviously they're like 300 grams or more a day. And that's on the higher end of low carb range.
Hmm.
Um, so that's kind of where I start them. And then the goal is to get them as low as possible that is sustainable for them to where they're seeing results and they don't want to binge and they don't feel restricted because I want this to be sustainable and not everyone needs to be zero. Not everyone can be zero in the moment. So that's kind of like my thought process when working with clients, is to meet them where they are and just know that I can't expect them to do what I'm doing because they're not Nicole. They're
Mm-hmm.
them, and they're in a different part of their journey than I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
And it took
Yeah,
me years to get here. So I can't expect someone else to, on day one, get to where I am, because it took
that's
me,
right.
what, 91 to, to now to get to where I'm at. So I just meet them where they are and just make slow cuts on their carbs and just focus on protein first, is how I approach it.
And I notice a lot of people in our influencer community, if they end up at carnivore, it was a process, right? It's not too many people that just, I mean, some do, they go from vegan to carnivore overnight, but most of the time it's a process. And I think that's better because you're kind of adjusting, not just based on the so-called, expert, but
Yeah.
you're doing that experiment N of one, and you're listening to your body and like, oh, it seems like I do better this way, so I'm going to do this. And I think that's really important to understand and realize. So I think that's really awesome. So I'm going to, kind of wrap us up, but I want to hear two things from you. Any kind of big picture thoughts about, your vision for what you want to do with your YouTube channel and your life. And then, of course, I want to make sure you protect your nest and tell me, what aspects, including the ones that you've just shared, do you plan to focus on personally? So give me some thoughts on those two things.
Yeah, so my YouTube channel, of course, continue to grow that. Eventually, I would like that to supplement my business, right? So people to get my food journal to for me to just help more people, whether it's through my content or people enrolling in my programs.
Hmm.
So that's my long term goal for YouTube, is to help more people, whether it's paid or just through my regular video content. Personally, I've lost about 70 pounds so far, so I still have a
Mm.
little, like, one more pant size to go for me to be
Hmm.
at my goal. So I would like to be at my goal. My goal was to be at my goal by my birthday weekend, which is Keto Palooza, actually, but I don't
Oh,
think that's
cool.
gonna happen. But by the end of the year, I would like to be at my goal weight. So that's my personal goal. Big picture, yeah, just be healthy, thrive. I would love to
Hmm.
compete in a powerlifting meet, but that's going to be my treat once I reach my goal, my weight loss goal. So rather than celebrating with food, I want to just compete just one meet. I've always wanted to do it. And I do have a new one-on-one coaching program. It's replacing my candid, like, weight loss so my specialties are weight loss, diabetes, and emotional eating. Those are kind of the clients I've been
Hmm.
working with all these years. So I'm replacing my one-on-one coaching with a trauma-based emotional eating program. So it's going to be a self-paced mini course with one-on-one coaching. So it's going to
Hmm.
be I'm selling actual programs now with one-on-one coaching. So that's my big picture goal, is to really, because not very many people are focused on the emotional eating aspect. They're not focused on the root cause. They're just focused on the food. So that's my big picture as far as YouTube business and personal goes, is just to help more people get to the root cause and stop putting a band-aid on it. And so, because me, I was focused on weight loss and diabetes like everyone else, but that's not going to fix the root cause.
That's right.
So that's my ultimate goal for the rest of this year.
Yeah, well, I like all of that, and again, we can never say root cause enough, because it may differ depending on who's in front of you. So if we can think about the approach you take, the approach I take, it just gives people things to think about as they're trying to achieve their metabolic health. So I really appreciate that. You mentioned Keto Palooza. Are you going this year?
I am, and you're gonna be a speaker. I
Yes, I just wanted
Yes.
to ask you. Yes, yes, so that we'll get a chance to literally see each other in person. Every time I go to these conferences and I meet people in person who I've met virtually, it's surreal to me. I'll never forget the first time I met Nina Taishos, and she stood before me. I was standing next to my wife, and she was like, "Hey, Tony," and I'm looking right at her and didn't know it was her because my brain, I'm like Like, who is this
Yeah.
person? I'm like, oh my God. And then I had a little brain fart, right? So yeah, so being in person is different. So thankfully we have technology, but thankfully we have a pandemic that's kind of ending, even though it's going to sneak up on us a little bit, and we can actually be in front of people. So
Yeah.
we're in good shape. So thank you
We'll high five in
so
person.
much. Yes. So we're going to do that for sure. So I'm looking forward to that. And we'll get a chance to high five with the rest of that crew. You know, Dr. Kim Berry will be there, of course. I just did my lasagna video, and I used Maria Emmerich's, keto lasagna. So she'll be there, and check out that video on YouTube, guys. Dr. Boz will be there, Dr. Joe and Rachel, which is the two crazy ketos. I don't know. I don't think I know Kim Hooverton, but she'll be
I've
there as
met
a
her. She's
speaker. You
awesome.
met her. She's awesome. And Dr. Ryan Lowry, he'll be new to me too, but I love these events. I love, and I'll be talking about basically the doctor-patient relationship and how I approach it. But some of that will address social determinants of health.
Oh.
Some will address health inequity. And because a lot of times when people struggle, people don't understand why. But so anyway, I thank you so much. How can people find you? I know we got the YouTube channel, but let's share with the audience where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my YouTube channel is at former fat girl, and my link tree is in my bio, where you'll find my website and my journal if you want to buy that on Amazon. So all my links are on my YouTube channel. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and it was nice to finally meet you. I've been following you around the YouTube, so it was nice to actually have a conversation with you.
Absolutely. And for those who are checking us out, we are going to end this conversation and actually go to both of our channels and do a live stream. So if you get a chance to get to YouTube while you're subscribing to this beautiful lady's YouTube channel, make sure to check out the conversation, the live stream we're going to have there as well. So thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, I guess I'll see you again in a few minutes.
That's right. You got that right. And as we wrap up, we learned from a wonderful coach that in order to achieve our health-related goals, we must focus on 4 areas: our mindset, our nutrition, our exercise, and of course, our emotions. Of course, these are all familiar to you because they're similar to my Protecting Your Nest theme. So I really hope that it provided more context, more food for thought for all of you guys who checked us out today. We will never get tired of doing this work. We will never get tired of providing hope and inspiration. And we believe that most chronic health conditions can be reversed, put into remission, whatever you want to call it. All we know is that the people who we talk to and share this message of healing with, they do really well. So I thank everybody for coming to this episode of the Protecting Your Nest podcast. And until the next episode, continue to be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest. You've been listening to Protecting Your Nest with Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com.